Hi, and thanks for tuning in. We're here today with Albert Garcia, and we will be live at 12 o'clock. So I hope you stay tuned. Hi, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be live in about 3 minutes. Remember, if you have any questions, to please put them in the comments. We'll see you soon. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Pittsburgh Digital Speaker Series by the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for tuning in today. We are live with Albert Garcia. Welcome, Albert.
Hello, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me on, Melanie.
Absolutely. Albert is the Senior Program Manager at Common Threads, and he's also the former wellness guru for the city of Pittsburgh. That is quite an interesting position name. I was always intrigued by that. What is a wellness guru?
That was something I wasn't sure of either when I first was told that was my title. Never heard of that, but it's actually a really good conversational starter. But in that role, I was really like a wellness coordinator. So we helped to, myself and my small team, we helped to put together wellness programs for city employees and to manage them, implement them, get data, all that fun stuff. But it was a really cool role, just getting involved with our employees here in Pittsburgh and some of our families and community members.
I love that. Well, before we get into how you got to that point and even further to where you are now, we would love to learn a little bit about you. Do you want to start with where you grew up and what your heritage is?
Sure. So I was born and raised in York, Pennsylvania, and both my parents are Puerto Rican. So my mom is born in Utuado, Puerto Rico, and my dad was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. So both of them moved to York right before I was born and brought me up there. And it's been York, and I'm sure we'll learn more, has been a great influence on my life, both as a Puerto Rican and then just as a professional, getting me to where I am now.
Awesome. And so you were born there, right?
Yes.
And so were you surrounded still by Puerto Rican culture?
Yeah. So interestingly, York has a decent, at least in the city, a decent Latino population there, including a Puerto Rican Day Parade every year. So my first part of my childhood, I was brought up in the city. So I was surrounded by a lot of other people that look like me and spoke like me. So I felt at home. There was bodegas at some certain corners. I had family there. So, and then I eventually moved forward to, my parents moved me out of the city to York Suburban, which was a move to, I guess, to get me a better education.
Mm-hmm. So when you were originally living there and you were still surrounded by all the culture, how did you feel that at that time that, being Latino made you who you are?
That's all I identified as. I mean, obviously I'm American first, and then I always classify myself as American and Puerto Rican, but I always had a strong connection to my Puerto Rican side. And so I would say being brought up in the city around going to school with majority of other minorities, it made it more challenging than when I did go to York Suburban, which is a suburban setting and surrounded by most people that don't look like me.
And so what was the difference in like your personality when you were in York? Were you outgoing? How did you feel as a person?
Yeah, so when you feel comfortable in a situation or environment, your personality flourishes more. So whether it be more involved with playing with friends, being able to knowing your neighborhood, knowing your community. And so I would say, like, when I lived in the city, I was more outgoing with friends, more social. And then even growing up basically as an only child, I didn't feel that way.
And so when you moved, you described that there was a little bit of a difference in the population, the ethnic population. Tell us what that looked like.
Sure. So when I moved to York Suburban, I was really the only minority student in my class. There are more minorities, but about over 90% of the student population is white. And so it was more uncomfortable, a little bit like I felt, especially in a school setting, it was, the content that you were learning in class was a little bit more advanced than what I was learning in the city school district. So though I felt confident in my intelligence, me being at this new school around new people, different people, and I definitely became a little bit more self-conscious, and it was something I had to learn to adapt and to continue growth as a person, whether I realized it at that time or not.
So as that's kind of how you felt about yourself, that's something that's internal. And seeing people around you who don't look like you is one thing, but was there any other level of it? How were you treated as an individual?
Yeah, I don't think I was treated, I would say I feel pretty privileged in, I guess, a sense that I was, to my knowledge, not treated any way that I was like any differently from my companions, other than maybe, maybe I think everyone has to get used to the new kid. And so I did speak a little bit different, like spoke with certain slang that kids didn't speak with, or, just dressed differently. So that was, I guess, when you thinking back, the way I was probably treated differently. And not that I was necessarily bullied, but I became self-conscious by even them pointing it out, though it may have not been like an aggressive manner. So, yeah, those are some situations where it definitely was noticed.
So at that school, something, first of all, that, as you know, we work on all the time with diversity and inclusion, is making sure that we have representation also at like a staff or a leadership level. Did you see people who you felt that you could identify with in those positions?
No, not necessarily, no. I always try to, even if there isn't, like, maybe there wasn't anybody at the school that I could really identify with at that level, I always felt that I was still supported. And so it wasn't, and then really the support at home, having my parents knowing that they did this because they wanted the best for me, and they were always behind me 100%, was really all I needed at that point.
So what would you say to kids who are going between this transition, that find themselves in a place? How can they find comfort? And also, how can, schools and staff and even companies where people are transitioning make the incoming person who may not feel totally at home, how do they mitigate that and make them feel better?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I know we'll get into my work, why I do what I do now, is to be able to be a presence in the community and be a figure that hopefully youth can look up to in whatever way, and then taking a step further, minority youth. But if you're a person that works in a school, whether you're white, black, Latino, I don't think it really matters, as long as you're willing to connect with the child and not treat them any differently, and making sure that they are given the same resources as any other kid. And so that's the most important thing to me, are those resources and that connection. So, yeah.
So when we did our pre-interview, we talked a little bit more about this process. I think we were on the phone for quite a long time, which I love. But we were talking about kind of how it made you feel in comparison to when you were at one school versus the other. And one of the things that you said to me, that you were never ashamed and that you were always proud, but that sometimes you could feel embarrassed just by even your accent or different things like that. Can you share those feelings for us, for the people who are going through that right now, whether it be at school, at their job, at their university, even out in public, how you overcame that?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, just to start, even to current day, I still deal with some not necessarily shame. It was, I guess, more when I was younger, but having the struggle of being Latino in a community, right? Like in Pittsburgh, though we are a growing community, it's still a very lower statistically community here. I still struggle at times connecting, and it's more internally. Like, I feel like I'm between two different populations. Like, though I am Puerto Rican. I'm strongly connected with this heritage. I don't speak Spanish fluently, and so like part of me gets at times, I guess ashamed that I don't speak Spanish fluently, and I feel like other Latinos judge me that way. And it might be more just internally feeling like projecting what I feel on that. But when I was younger, and growing up and still experiencing these feelings, not so much when I lived in the city, and definitely when I lived out, I think I felt like I was proud of being who I was, but I did have this slight adjustment to where if you're thrown into any environment, you want to adapt and you want to be similar to those around you. So I went through a change in wardrobe. I am not wearing like the urban outfits, whatever that would be classified as. I'm wearing more preppy clothes, or I no longer speak with slang. I'm using more proper English and pronunciation. So in some ways it really helped me, especially with speech. I'm pretty sure I had a speech impediment when I was younger, and wasn't really, it could have been diagnosed. My parents didn't do anything about it. But it was, my trials and tribulations of growing up in two different environments while I was younger and having to adapt to each, I think has really allowed me to better connect with the community today. And I feel grateful for it. I'm not ashamed of who I am, but I do, sometimes struggle with that identity of wanting to make sure I fit in, which I think most people do.
I love that. And thank you for sharing the process and what you went through. I want to unpack a little bit more, the talking about how you transition and how you consciously change things about yourself. I think when you first said it, the way that you worded it, it sounded like I needed to change these things to fit in. But then as you spoke more, it sounded more like you thought, this is how I need to improve myself also for me, not necessarily just to fit in. So what would you say to the people who feel like they need to change themselves for other people? Or, how would you like to package that? Because I know that's not what you think.
Yeah, no, for sure. There is, I think you always need to be proud of who you are. And that's, in my line of work, every individual is different. I do a lot of I do some personal training and things like that. Like every person, every body's different and requires different attention. Doesn't mean that change doesn't need to occur. I think you need to be comfortable and confident in who you are, but there's always areas for improvement. So, through whatever, lessons you're taught in life or barriers that you reach, such as moving to a new school district, what is it that you can take from that and know that that's something that if I change it, it doesn't change who I am. And if you answer that question, like if I do this, and this is, I'm going to take away time from who I am or my family or whatever the case is it worth that change? So I think it's finding those, that balance and doing some deeper search within yourself, which may not be something you can do by yourself, but through friends and family and other help.
Yes, definitely. Well, I love that, you explained that a little more, because I think it's so important to always keep improving yourself and make sure that you're doing that for yourself and not for other people. And I always see that so much in you. I want to talk a little bit more about how you said you don't fit into one group or another. That's something that we talk about on almost every one of these, how things, especially in our area, are often seen as one or the other, as black or white, and kind of nothing in between. Will you talk to us a little bit more about your experience with that, your feelings with that, as well as advice for others?
Yeah. So the challenge is, trying to figure out how the best way to word it.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's, for example, I struggle with some of my identity as a Latino, and I think what I did when I came to Pittsburgh was, one, I figured out, what do I want to do, while I'm here, what's best for me. And I helped, actually, my mentor, Richard Butler, helped me create a personal mission statement. And it was really to positively affect anybody's life who, I come in touch with. So, but for me to do that, I have to be open. I have to put myself out there. And so you have to challenge your comfort, and for me, that was really starting to get more involved with the Latino community here. And it's something I dabbled in college. I did some involvement with the Latino student organization, but that was something that was a stretch because it required me to network. It required me to join the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in Pittsburgh, and force myself into the community. And I knew by doing that, I would also learn to love this side of myself even more. And then, on the other hand, there's more communities in Pittsburgh than just the Latino one. And trying to make sure I do, with my job with the city, it really opened my eyes to the 90 communities here in Pittsburgh and how different each one and how special each one is. And so, just being able to connect with people, I think it's been helpful for me. It's something that I've always, I enjoy doing, and just learning about people and cultures. And I think just that internal push to learn more and to question and to what's the word I'm looking for? Just to be interested in what's around me has allowed me to immerse myself into all different sides and become better.
Great. Well, I want to remind everybody watching, if you have any questions or comments, make sure that you put them down there. We will be answering questions at the end. But I want to come back to, so we talked a little bit about your childhood, what being Latino meant to you then. I want to now talk about your move into higher education. As a lot of people watching this know, the numbers for higher education in Latinos are lower than any other group. However, we are growing the most quickly in that. More Latinos than ever are getting higher education, which keep going. Can you tell us a little bit about the value of education in your family, what your parents did, and how that transition went?
Yeah, so for me, college was not an option. It was always just a date that was coming. I graduated high school in 2008, so it was and you're going to college. But my parents, I have a little presentation later, and I'll get into their background a little bit too. But they didn't grow up. They grew up with very little, and so just like most, I'll say a lot of American families, not just Latino families, they have this background of lower middle class, or lower class, and you always want to do more for your kids. And so that was, other than providing, was knowing that school is the way to go. And so my dad was a welder for most of his life, and so he was always like, you want to think with your head, not with your hands. So that was the one quote I always remember. I remember him saying. So that was something that I took and I really ran with.
Well, I want to come over here. I want to skip to your slideshow just because I want to integrate it in the things that we're talking about. So I want to come back to common threads so you can talk about that. But as we bring up your parents, I want to bring up that slide. So tell us a little bit about these two places here.
Yeah, so my dad was born in the Bronx in the 1950s. So that was he was one of 8 children. Both my grandparents were from Puerto Rico, and my grandfather fought in World War II, and they moved to New York City. And my dad growing up during that time, it was if you ever seen Bronx Tale, like it's
Yes.
very similar to, from what I understand, just listen to my uncles talk about how it was back then. And so my grandfather worked 3 jobs to support the family. My grandmother was a stay-at-home mom with 8 kids. So they got into a lot of trouble. They've had their trials and tribulations, but all the family members really have made it a successful life for themselves and for their kids. And then my mom being born in Utuado, which is like the country of Puerto Rico, beautiful place too. It's she had kind of a similar struggle. She then moved to New York when she was a kid, grew up in Brooklyn, and then moved back to Puerto Rico for like high school, and then moved back to New York. But it was a struggle, and she was a single mom for a while with my brother and sister who are a little older than me. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry about that. So you're the youngest?
Yes, I'm one of 3, and there's a 12-year difference between my brother and I, and an 18-year difference between my sister and I.
So as Latinos, I know we're always very focused on family. Tell us about your family dynamic.
So, but all my siblings and I are half siblings. I'm my dad's only son. But and my sister, both my siblings were born in New York. My sister has lived there. She stayed there her whole life. My brother lives in New York, PA. He was 12 when I was born, so they moved with him. So it was a very typical, I think, Puerto Rican household. My mom, she always cooked. My dad was always very involved too. Whether it might be like Saturday mornings, waking up to like Victor Manuel on the radio, to have to then clean and dance with her and things like that. It was very, like, I think, kind of like standard family in that sense, and going to family parties. It could be for holidays, whatever case, usually going back to New York.
So are you planning on integrating those things into your family now as well?
I do already. When I went to college, I got a little homesick with eating wise. Like I didn't have any more rice and beans or anything, so I had to learn. I'll call my mom up and be like, "Hey, mom, how do I make rice and beans?" And she'll walk me through it. And I struggled for a little while to get everything figured out. But I like to think now I can make some really good rice and beans. And then, and actually, a lot of family events, I end up being the one that makes it, and then other things too. So like Fendi and yeah, other things. And so I now am kind of like the cook in that sense in my family. It's just my wife and I, and we have 2 dogs. And then I have I still have a big connection with Latino culture and music, and still carry on that. Anytime I clean, I always have to put on salsa as it's just like an automatic response.
That is so me. Saturday mornings, we've got the music blasting here, maybe even at night, and we're cleaning. But so, I mean, that kind of, to me, knowing you and knowing your love for nutrition and everything else that you got into in college and beyond, is this where it came from?
Not necessarily. Well, kind of, and we'll get into that. But the culture has a lot to do with where I'm at today, and it's actually kind of the if you can say like the negative content of what our food and culture is, and how that affected me growing up, and then the changes I had to make, and why I do now, why I do what I do now. So yeah, that's probably where, and it's not negative. Like culture is never negative, and the food is never never bad, but understanding what we eat and why we eat.
So when you first went to college, did you know what you wanted to go to school for? Wait. Did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? I love the answers I get here.
All right, so like probably like many Latinos, I wanted to be a baseball player when I was younger. Then I switched like basketball, but baseball is really it. And that was definitely my best sport growing up. And I did like some other, I got boxed too. Um, and as I got older, basketball became more of my favorite sport. But regardless, so baseball player, and I really kept that dream up until college.
So what stopped you from becoming a baseball player?
Realizing that the actual baseball players it takes some serious talent. I could be a good player, but
I mean, I think that you have helped so many people in the space that you're in. I kind of think maybe that's why.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't meant to do it. I don't know. Different calling.
So where did you go to school?
I went to Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania. So it's one of the state schools in Pennsylvania.
And how did you feel about diversity and fitting in there?
Shippensburg I think it's typical of many universities. There's not a huge minority presence, but there is a community there, and so I made a lot of my friends playing basketball there. But also towards the end of my like junior and senior year, I started to get involved with the Multicultural Student Affairs Office and also the Latino Student Organization. So I started to get involved more with different organizations on campus, along with just having a diverse group of friends, which when you play basketball, that tends to be a theme. It's a connector of a lot of people.
So talking about joining clubs, I know there are a lot of people who especially come to the Pittsburgh area who feel like they can't find the Latino community. They don't fit in. I've even heard of a lot of people leaving because we don't have any centralized location. Can you talk about the importance of finding those communities at universities as well as, in the region at large, and how that helps people transition?
Yeah, you can make the best of any situation. I think so. Another quote from my mentor is, you create your own weather. So whatever environment you want to be in, you can be in, as long as there is something there, you can be in it. And I think like Pittsburgh, though it has a smaller community for Latinos, it's a really great one. And it's a matter of finding it, and it's a matter of being involved. So if you're here on this call today, that's a step into being involved with your community and your organizations that are here. And you also have to do some research potentially. I had to do that actually here. I wasn't given resources about what was going on, so use the resources that are available to you, and just having be open-minded and be able to be willing to dive in to see what's around and what's available for you to do what you want to
do. So how do you think that affected your job, getting involved in these, what we would call community groups, even on a university level? How did that change you and help you become who you are today?
Well, it allowed me to realize what I truly wanted to do in life, which was, and maybe at certain times I didn't realize it early on, but it was really to be involved with helping people, and that's just been my driver in life. And then health and wellness, exercise science was my undergrad degree. That was my way of being able to help others, was through helping them become healthier individuals. So I lost track of the question. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was asking you, how do you think that becoming involved in those like community organizations helped shape who you are today?
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, and so being involved with these organizations opened my eyes to the great community around me, but what were some of the needs, some of the things that were already standing out as like, wow, I didn't realize we had this, this program or this opportunity here. And then and then just being able to connect with more people. I say connect a lot. That's just one of the things I like to do. But and the more people I've met by networking and getting involved has actually really helped me do my job today, which is being able to provide nutrition programming for families and for organizations. So it's really groomed me to being a successful person on a personal level and then professional as well.
So I love hearing you talk now as we're talking about how you met people and help people. One of the things that we discussed when we spoke before this was how you were an extrovert when you were in school, when you really felt that you fit in. And then as you got older and you transitioned to a school with less diversity, you became more of an introvert. How did you circle back around to being this great connector and this person who gets to know and helps everyone?
Well, college allowed me to become who I am today. And it's one reason why you can have a great career without going to college. You can make a lot of money. You can be successful in many ways. I personally believe that it matures you in other ways that you can't. It's more difficult to get without the college setting. So being able to socially connect with others and get involved with opportunities. So I don't know why I keep blanking on these questions.
No, that's okay. I mean, these are hard subjects, and I think that whenever even talking one-on-one is kind of different than talking in something like this. I think there are a lot of people who can really identify with what you went through, especially not even just Latinos, like anyone who goes into a new setting, even if they look like everyone else, even if they have the same degree, when you go into a new, say, office setting, for example, and you just don't feel a part of that group. And one of the things that I love about you, and as we were talking and you told me about how difficult it was, I would never, ever think that, especially with the position you held with the city, it was such a social thing. And I was really shocked when you told me that you had a level of discomfort, even coming into a room with a ton of professionals, that you said that wasn't always easy for you. And I think there are so many people who there are students who are going to watch this. There are maybe young professionals who are going to watch this, who that's where they are now. And when they look at you and they see the positions that you've had and, the places that you've spoken and different things like that, they think, oh, I wish I could be like that. I wish I wasn't shy like him, or, XYZ, all these things that maybe you don't feel in your own head. And I just love diving a little deeper into that so that people can identify and not feel alone and see how you overcome that, not just then, but, on a daily basis.
Yeah. And it's still really uncomfortable. It's something that takes like continuing effort into growing myself in that way. And so you really have to be uncomfortable. And like, I'll like, even doing this, like, it's still something that's not, easy to do for me. But I think when you want something and it's good for you, it's going to make you stronger, you're willing to at least try it. And so, yeah, and that's goes for anyone. If it's something that pushes you to have that, like, that feeling of just wanting to go back into your room and close the door, go after it. And so that's really what the organizations have made me get better at. Still a work in progress, though.
Well, I think that you are doing an amazing job, and we very much appreciate it. We are eventually going to move to Common Threads and learning a little more about it. But when we spoke, we discussed another hurdle that you overcame in college. And we talked about you and I. We have the same scholarship, right? Did you have the Board of Governors scholarship? Was that you, or that was Andrea? Sorry. You should have had it. But we talked about when you first started college, that you came in with high grades from a good school, and there was a little bit of difficulty moving from high school to college. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So I struggled my first semester in college because of, I think, I had this feeling like I was so excited to go into college and meet people and get involved with things and have fun. And so the education took a back seat to the social aspect of college. And I'm not saying the partying, it was really like going to play basketball 3 hours a day and then going to eat and then playing video games in the dorms and things like that. Just really being a social butterfly hurt me, and then expecting me to like get good grades without studying, despite going to a good academic high school. I ended up with a 0.75 GPA, and I was like, what kind of grading scale do they use here? Is this a real thing? So it was a hit, and yeah, somehow I overcame it.
So that is so good to know. So anyone who's struggling right now, if your GPA is awful, no offense, you could still come up. You can always save it. How did you do that? How did you overcome going from that 0.75 to taking the next step?
Yes, honestly, it was challenging. It was just I didn't want to let down my family. I didn't want to let down those who supported me. So I worked hard to do summer classes, paid for them myself through working in the summer. I continued to struggle even through undergrad, to be honest. I didn't graduate with like high honors. It was like a 2.7 GPA at Shippensburg. And so it was, I say that I'm not that I'm proud of it, but I learned a lot from that experience. And somehow I was given the opportunity with the University of Pittsburgh to continue on my education in grad school. So I did continue to go to grad school and get a degree in wellness and human performance because it took a chance on me. It was a younger program, and they let me in, and I was able to do much better than undergrad. I think just being more focused and driven. So I finished with 3.6 GPA at Pitt. So it's been a roller coaster ride, but it's one that you just don't give up, and you just figure out, how can I get better from this?
I think that is so important to say that, you can give people second chances and that they can thrive afterwards. What would you say to the people in leadership about the importance of looking at you and looking beyond what your grades were?
I know in that leadership position, it can be challenging when you're finding a candidate that you want to fit the role that you have available. And the one thing that grades don't show is the personality, and sometimes the work ethic isn't. Just because the work ethic and the grades aren't there doesn't mean that they don't, like, that desire to want more and to do more isn't there. So I think just giving the opportunity to interview people despite what their resume, if they kind of fit whatever that desired position is, may not be the best qualified, but might be worth a chance talking to. That's someone that I think should be talked to, because you never know who that candidate might be. I mean, I've been turned down from a couple positions, and interestingly, with Pivot Physical Therapy, when I first applied to be a personal trainer there when I was moving to Pittsburgh, they didn't give me a job. And then a year later, I applied and I got the job. And it was, they actually say to this day how, like, they don't, not that the other personal trainer wasn't good, but it's, they wish they would have hired me in that first time. But it was just bad interview on my part, actually. But I think underestimating what I was capable of doing.
So how were you able to convey to them and to stand out, when you were going to Pitt and they spoke with you? What advice do you have for people who might not have the perfect grades but have that drive? How do they convey that?
So really making sure that for me, going, like, applying to Pitt, I worked with one of my best friends to make sure that my essays were well written, and he was also he already got accepted into that program. So, and then, and really conveying my story and being honest. I think that was the biggest thing. If I remember correctly, one of my essays was about my struggle in undergrad, and trying to tell them that I learned from this and I want to be given a chance if you let me. And so I'm fortunate they took a chance on me, and thankful to this day.
So it sounds like you had a lot of hurdles, but we haven't even talked about everything. Tell us about financial aid. I didn't even know that this was a thing until we talked about it.
Oh, yeah, so I maxed out my financial aid. So when I got accepted into the program and I did the FAFSA, I was awarded at $400. I was like, well, it's not going to cover the tuition at Pitt. So they would not. I could do a Grad Plus loan, but they would not do that without me, a degree-seeking student. And so Pitt accepted me under those conditions of I was a non-degree seeking student. I had to prove myself after the first semester, and they would then allow me into the program if I had the grades. So I had to go back and ask them if you could just let me get in so I can get the financial aid to be able to, to actually go through the program. So that was another close call where I, despite getting accepted, I wouldn't have been able to go in.
So always you just keep pushing until you find a solution, and that is how you find success. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you have all these hurdles, but you just have to keep overcoming them, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So I want to talk a little bit about your community involvement. You are someone who is very involved in the community. Tell us about the organizations that you're involved with and what your role is there.
Yeah, I'm involved with the Association of Latino Professionals for America, so Alpha Pittsburgh, and I'm a board member with them in a marketing role. When I was a wellness guru, we wore many hats, and marketing became something that I actually enjoy doing and became decent at. So I do help out with that, and the organization is just designed to help build and grow professionals, and we are launching a new leadership academy starting next week. And then I'm also involved with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Pittsburgh, and it's been I've been involved the longest of all the organizations for over 2 years now, and I've gotten involved with helping with a new mentoring program too with the chamber, and then also just staying involved with things like this and other opportunities or events that occur. So it's been great being involved with the chamber. And then lastly, I am also involved with the Young Democrats of Allegheny County. And that's a new organization for me and a new venture for me. I've never been politically involved, and it's something that has sparked this year. And I've wanted to just figure out how I can do more. And I was asked to be involved in a diversity and inclusion role. So my goal is to really be able to help educate and make sure that our voters in Pittsburgh know who they're voting for, and make sure those who they're voting for represent the community properly. And so that's a role I'm learning, just started, and I'm excited to see where that goes. So those three.
So what do you think is the importance of education and voting for society today, especially in an election year?
Yeah, not everyone knows how important voting is, but I like to think that the knowledge of why people vote is somewhat there. If you want change, we are a democracy, you vote for change. I think what's really important is setting an example for those that are, if you have kids or those that look up to you or your friends, family, I think the least you can do is vote. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't take much time. You can do some research, make sure that you're right for the right person. But I think voting it's like practicing any other good habit. You should be drinking at least 64 ounces of water a day. If you don't, it's not going to make that by itself isn't going to be the forever change, but is a change in the right direction. So making sure you vote to continue on with, like I said, leading by example and doing what you are fortunate to be able to do.
Well, thank you for sharing. Where can people learn more about the election or the organization that you just recently got involved with?
Yeah, so WIDEC does have a website.
We can always share that in the comments later.
Share that, yeah. Yeah, and there is ways to get involved, whether it be donation, volunteering. So we can share that for sure.
Awesome. Well, I want to now go to your slides. If you first want to tell us a little bit about Common Threads, how you got involved and what they do, I think that'd be a great start.
So this year, an odd year, I was able to start a new job with Common Threads, and so from working with the city, I realized, and the organization's community was something that I wanted to make sure I can work a little bit more in depth with, all the various communities. So Common Threads allows that to happen. I'm a senior program manager for them, and it specifically provides nutrition and cooking education programming for youth and for families of mainly communities that are under-resourced or underserved. And so I love the idea of being a manager in this role, and I was fortunate to be able to apply and get the job. I'm excited I'm fairly new, a little less than 2 months in, and I'm excited to be able to create some change. And it really, as I mentioned with my upbringing, understanding how culturally we eat a certain way, and we are also brought up in a world, and especially in the United States, where food, like marketing, for example, can really make an influence, and then also the environment and other just resources that are available can make a difference in how we eat and how our health can be compromised at times. So this job allows me to bring in programming to educate and hopefully make a better future for our community. Sorry, you're muted, Melanie. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said definitely. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to talk about. I mean, food, and health in general is a huge foundation in society. And it's something that we don't always think about. I think now in today's days, we are more cognizant than ever of how we eat, what we eat, but just being involved in that on a higher level and helping to kind of get in there and make sure that especially kids and families are educated and, can build that foundation in a good way is amazing.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So Melanie, yeah, we can keep going. So I do want to talk a little bit about, you've all already kind of heard my upbringing with sports. I enjoyed playing video games.
I'm so sorry. I actually was on mute. I was going to say, for those of you who are just tuning in, we already talked a little bit on Albert's background, and you can always come back and watch it later. He shared with us where he grew up, how being Latino had an effect on him. And he, now we're here at the Childhood Hobbies. Go ahead, Albert.
Yeah, so this slide, the purpose of this was to show that I was, though physically active, I also play some video games. I can be thankful for these hobbies, or at least the athletic ones, because if not, I would probably be like 400 pounds. And then if you could continue. I had this to lead into, despite my physical activity, I was also not, eating properly. And so my upbringing as in a Puerto Rican household, from parents who struggled to wanting the best for their child, they were willing to, they did everything that I could ask for. It was put a roof over my head, give me some clothes, and give me food to eat. And for them, making sure that their child is fed is very important. And I was my dad's only child, so it was even like more important then. And that's common in a lot of families where, especially minority families and even a lot of just American families in general, this need to feed our family, make sure they have enough to eat. And so for me, after school, I got in a habit of eating like a frozen pizza, some Martin's potato chips, which is a little bit more local to central PA, and a soda. And that was about 600 calories right there, just in a snack. And my parents would not say anything about that other than don't overeat so you don't eat dinner. Well, that didn't matter to me. I was a big eater. So as we go into the dinner slide, I would eat the snack and then like an hour and a half later have maybe like your rice beans and a pork chop and another soda. So right there is maybe 800 to 1,200 calories, depending on how much I ate, which never thought anything of it. And so, as you can imagine, I did get a little chubby in my beginning of high school, and I was fortunate to be active. But what really changed my life was joining a cross country team. And one of my best friends, he actually same friend that helped get me into Pitt, was a captain of our cross country team. And despite the running, what actually was the life-changing part of it was the coaches and being able to educate us in nutrition and how to properly fuel your body to run, but understanding that fueling your body properly also helps with your school, with your work. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I love that we are kind of going back through what we went through and looking at it in this different lens. We learned a little bit about your emotional before, and now to hear about the physical part behind it is great.
And it's something that, I think going through this with you, Melanie, has really opened my eyes to connecting some of these pieces together. So yeah, thank you for just even bringing me on to talk about this. And it's something I know that I have this want and desire to help our community, and this is where it really comes from. And so understanding your family, your heritage, and those are my parents next to me, and then on the other side is my wife and her parents. Just understanding your heritage and the love that your family has, that they're willing to provide for you, it's great. But you also have to, and for any parents that are out there or people that are aspire to have kids, it is important to be careful about what you are feeding your child or what you plan to eat or how you eat now. It could just be what you are currently, maybe struggling with. And Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, who is she's a obesity medicine scientist out of Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital. She was on a panel discussion and quoted through some research that weight is more heritable than height, which I thought was mind-boggling. I was like, what? So you're telling me that I'm more likely to be like my dad weight-wise than get his height? So that stuck with me. And a lot of it.
I thought it would have been the exact opposite. I'm sure there are a lot of other people watching because we like to think of weight as like something that we can control,
Yeah, but it also changes genetically what our body would like to digest and what hormones are released and what we would rather store for energy and use for energy. So it really controls so much of what our health. And so these are just some stats on showing that Hispanics and Blacks have a higher rate of obesity. And over the years, all across all all nationalities, you still see just a rise in obesity. So it's something that isn't, that we're in a process of hopefully working on, but it's still a really urgent matter.
So why do you think that is?
There's the genetic component, there's the cultural component, there is your environment where you're raised. So if you're raised, like in Pittsburgh, if you're raised in Homewood, or even the Hill District, they're food deserts. So you have no access to good food or limited access. And so and even like if you continue, there's a slide on how ads, for example, and this is some statistics on children, but yeah, you can continue.
Hold on,
I'm sorry.
I don't want to skip these. We'll get to that when we get to it. I think
okay.
This
I'm
is
sorry.
so important.
You can stay right here. You can stay right here. So we'll start with these statistics. But so, children are just as effective as adults. So, and it's just scarier, to be honest. We have about 13.7 million children that are under the obese category. And each grouping of years, they continue to increase. And then if you look at the Hispanics and Blacks at 25%, 22% compared to prevalence in whites of obesity, for children, it's much higher. And then if you want to relate it to COVID-19, the impact that COVID has on these minority populations is really it's painful to see the numbers, and I don't have them directly, but there is a huge difference in deaths from COVID in these populations compared to whites, and a lot of it has to is due to our health.
So do you think that that's all socioeconomic, or do you think it has anything to do with culture? When I think of COVID, I feel like one of the components is Latinos and African Americans. We're so much more family oriented, and I think maybe a lot of us saw our families before we should have.
I think there's so many factors, and they're all related to one another. If you're at a lower socioeconomic level, there's also a lower education, lower education in those communities, which means less understanding of nutrition and exercise, which leads to issues like obesity, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and diabetes as a result, potentially. And so, it's a really big problem, but it's something that I'm actually now, because of all the work I've put into in my life, I'm now able to help just through common threads.
So how do we change this?
Yeah, so I listed some resources here just to look into, because there are really, I think the biggest way to start with change is to get some help. I had my coaches with cross country help me, but we can't. It's difficult to solve these things by ourselves. So it could be reaching out to your doctor, or if you have an employer, there's usually an employee assistance program which has health coaches that you can talk to for free. Same thing through your medical insurance. Local resources. So if you're in Pittsburgh, Case Specific Nutrition, which is actually my friend's company. He's a registered dietitian. He has offices around the city that provide counseling for families as well. And then resources like 412 Food Rescue, Grow Pittsburgh, they help to provide food for people that don't have the capabilities of getting fruits and veggies like they should, along with programming to help with that. And Common Threads is another one that's a resource in the area. And the whole mission is to provide for families and children this nutrition education with understanding the cultural value. Common Threads, like in the title, is just the weaving of all these people and being around the table and being able to connect with food, but in a healthy way.
And what about, let's see, so many things have changed because of COVID. Can you tell us a little bit about your response to COVID as an organization?
So we initially responded by we had to kind of shut down programming. I mean, we mainly had programming in schools. So with schools being closed, that was not a thing. And we were able to use some of our extra Giant Eagle gift cards that were donated given to us. We were able to donate them to provide porch boxes, which served 600 families. And this was done through UPMC's Children's Hospital, their family care connection centers. And with those boxes, we had some educational resources like recipe cards. And then since then, we've been able to pivot our in-person programming to all virtual programming. So that's the exciting part, I guess, of this year is figuring out this virtual world and how we're able to effectively bring programming to our youth and help educators all around the region keep an importance of nutrition education in their teaching and their curriculum, and also reaching out and trying to expand to other areas in the city to, there are so many people in need and different ways to get them. So it's a process in general. But yeah, here are some of our programs that we have right now. Small Bites is like our anchor program. There's 8 sessions, each one kind of build on one another. There's cooking involved with it, so you get to follow along. So if you learn about healthy fats, you can make some guacamole with it to also enjoy. And we're doing that type of stuff virtually too. So we're happy we're able to do that. And
wait, before you move on, tell us, so in person, like right now, people have to follow along and kind of do their own, but what is it like in person? Do you actually bring people in and cook?
Yeah, in person, there's a couple different ways you can do it, but we do have some chef instructors that come in and cook. And even our virtual ones, we had, this summer, we had a national program that was really open to Chicago and New York right now. But Gail Simmons, who's on Top Chef and Kids Top Chef, I think she came in and did a cooking demo, which was really cool with the kids. But yeah, we will, we get a registration. We send the food for the recipes that are needed, and then virtually you cook along with the chef. And then in person, it's even better because you can then have a chef come into your classroom, or sometimes if you're in a school, like the teacher is the chef or the PE teacher. And so it's really cool. Really anybody can get trained to put on one of these programs, and it goes a long way. And there's things you can add to it. There's a whole world cuisine section that's not listed here. But you can go from, 1 week you're learning about Indian cuisine and making like naan and something else, or you can do Mexican cuisine. And so there's some really cool stuff. I really like the parent workshops too. So this gives us the opportunity to engage our parents to make sure they're educated on nutrition. And then we also encourage the children to join in if they can and have that family dynamic.
So how can people get involved in this? Like how do you get to be a part of even one of the virtual workshops?
So right now, they're dependent on the partners that we have. So like Pittsburgh Public Schools is one of our partners. So if you have a child in Pittsburgh Public, we're still everything's kind of slowed down and things are getting figured out. As you can imagine, trying to be an educator or run a school at this time, it's very stressful. My wife is she's an administrator at a charter school here, so it's tough time. So right now, programming is slow, but through your school, you can get programming. A lot of our programs are grant funded. You can also get. We're going to be having some programming available just in general. So we're reaching out to local partners, kind of like Children's Hospital. City parks and trying to make some of our programs available through there. But if you check out our website, we have a ton of resources. In particular, our Common Bites website here, you can go on and get recipes both in English and Spanish. And then you could also, there's games and things like that you can play. But if you wanted to sign up we have an on-demand program, which is really cool this year. So it's self-paced and self-led. You don't need us to help you with. You can sign up your child for that, and they can go through it as if you need them to do something in the afternoon or during the day to occupy some time. And it's also meant to be have some off-screen time and include some exercise too. So another way you can also kind of stay up to date with what we're doing is our newsletter. And I can put this into the chat too, but we have this newsletter that goes out, and there's updates on events, there's recipes that you can download and use yourself. I don't know if actually anybody can see this, but we can always send it out separately. But
which one are you?
I'm on the private chat. That's probably not the same thing.
No, you know what? I am gonna put up really quick. Do you want me to just put up the website?
It doesn't matter. I was gonna just put up, I was gonna put the link for people to, if they were interested in signing up for the newsletter.
Absolutely. I'm gonna put the link over in there. And this is so fascinating. And I think it's so cool that you incorporate different cultures as well. How do you guys choose those programs and those foods?
We have a really great curriculum team and research team, and there are people that are part of our company that's what they do, is to make sure that our food is culturally diverse and applicable to who we are providing food for. Like, you're not going to go into a Latino or Black community and have recipes that are not like culturally similar to like what you eat on a normal basis. It's difficult to try to create change that way. So they do a good job of having some recipes like the fried chicken there, but how do you make some changes that make it a little bit more nutritionally sound? And so that's really cool. And then also all these programs are built in to be part of like state standards for education too. So that's why educators can use them in class.
I love that. Well, I think that we've already learned so much, and I love, that theme of there is always something you can do to make it healthier. There's always something you can do to make your life better, especially talking about where you came from and the things you've overcome. So just knowing that you can always pivot to improve your life, I think is kind of a theme that we've had throughout this. Do you want to say something on that before we wrap up?
I feel like I've talked a lot in this past hour.
We've enjoyed it.
I hope if you've been listening this whole time that you got that message of just pushing on. And Melanie had asked a question in her like pre-interview about like a future plan, and I take my life really day by day and make the best of every opportunity given to me. So I try to not plan too much in advance because things change. Who expected COVID to come along and flip the world? So you really have to be adaptable and just take it slow and don't hold yourself back. If it makes you uncomfortable, just push and go for it.
Absolutely. Well, before we leave, we're going to go to one question. Douglas asked, Puerto Ricans continue to move into the United States in the pursuit of better opportunities, especially since Hurricane Maria. Besides joining Latinx organizations like the Chamber, what other ideas would you give to those Boricuas that are soul searching and trying to reconnect with their culture?
There are, and it can be challenging. We talked about how Pittsburgh has a smaller community, but it is there. And for example, like for Puerto Rico, for those coming from Puerto Rico or the Boricuas, there are people here. There's a Puerto Rican barbershop, Los Primos, in Allentown. There's also certain vendors. I know there's a Puerto Rican barbecue spot that opened up or has a kitchen in, is it Garfield, I believe. There was like there's different spots. You really kind of, and that's where I think getting involved with the organizations can lead you to those desires to like get that culture that you want. But it's keep an eye open on what's around, and then there's one. And if there's any businesses, I mean, like even if they're not necessarily Puerto Rican businesses, but just a Latino business, being able to support and then connect with them. Usually they're willing to support other Latino businesses. So That's something else that I've done where, just as if there's any recommendations for any other food or other things. Are those resources good for low income people? I'm sorry, Melanie, you're muted.
I was actually looking on my phone because Angela right here, she's a part of an organization called Maya, and they actually offer a lot of resources as well. And I was trying to look to give a little description, but I'll put that later in the chat box. But can you, for her answer, are those resources good for low income people? And I know because her organization serves that group. If you can touch on just really quickly how you work with other groups and if it's good for low income people.
Definitely. We actually focus on the really low income. Like, for example, if you're going to go into a school district or any organization, 80% of the students, in order for grant funding, for us to apply our grant funding to help pay for these programs, 80% of students have to be eligible for free or reduced lunches. So that is usually a standard for our programs. And yes, so the answer is yes, and we could always chat after or offline to figure out some details.
I love it. Well, after this, Albert is probably going to go in the chat and put some extra links and some extra additional information. I want to thank you for being here with us today. I think we learned a lot about nutrition, resilience, all these different things. We can't wait to see what you do next, and we want to thank you for everything you do in the community every day. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So if you guys haven't yet, please click the subscribe button so that way you receive a notification whenever we go live. The Latino Pittsburgh Digital Speaker Series is an initiative of the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Its goals are to share relevant information, inspire growth, foster opportunity. Our speakers include community leaders and members, as well as other individuals who have a positive impact on not only the Hispanic community, but the Pittsburgh region as a whole. To learn more, you can visit www.pmahcc.org. If you guys want to become a speaker, you can always DM me, send me an email, whatever it may be. Next week, we're going to be talking to Ron Alvarado. Ron owns the Novus Group, which is a staffing firm, and he's just a tremendous person, very active in the community. We're going to be talking a little bit about the digital job interview and how you can stand out online. Things have changed so much, and even though we've adjusted, especially people who are needing to get into new jobs, what can you do and what can set you apart? So thank you all for tuning in, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye.